Hindi sabay sa kumpas ang mga boses ng Department of Science and Technology, Department of Health at Food and Drug Administration sa usapin ng pagsasagawa ng clinical trial sa bansa ng mga bakuna laban sa COVID-19. At ito ang pinuna ni Senator Francis Tolentino sa kanyang privilege speech dahil anya ang Pilipinas ay bahagi ng pagtutulungan ng higit 100 bansa para ma-develop ang bakuna na tatalo sa COVID-19.
In the Philippines, we are part of the race against time involving an unprecedented global effort to find a treatment against COVID-19. As regards the procurement and acquisition of new vaccines, the Philippines joined the COVID-19 vaccines Global Access Facility known as COVAX. Gavi, a partner of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, is likewise a leading COVAX partner. This global effort will allow the Philippines to get rapid access to newly developed COVID-19 vaccines. Ito lang po ang pinagtataka ko, Mr. President. The Department of Science and Technology recently announced that clinical trials for at least 6 candidate vaccines against COVID-19 could start in the country this month as part of the WHO-led Solidarity Trial. According to the DOST, the Philippines has already entered into 6 confidential data agreements, CDA, confidential data agreements with the following institutions and pharmaceutical companies. Number 1, Ademmune of Taiwan. Number 2, Seqirus of Australia. Number 3, Russia's Gamaleya Institute. Number 4, China's Sinovac, China's Sinopharm, and Anhui Zhifei. The DOST has allocated 89.1 million for the conduct of WHO Solidarity Trial in the Philippines.
Anya sa naging pahayag ng DOST, tila abot kamay na ang bakuna, ngunit kailangan lang gawin ng tama ang lahat dahil nakasalalay ang buhay ng mga Pilipino.
The DOST announcement means that we are one step closer to developing an effective vaccine against COVID-19. I fully support the heroic efforts of the scientific community to find a cure to bring an end to this pandemic. DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña confirmed that the Philippines has already signed CDAs on COVID-19 vaccines involving at least 5 countries. However, when asked about reports that there are alleged COVID-19 vaccines already being distributed in the country at this time and whether this underwent the proper licensing procedure, he denied any knowledge of this. To quote the good secretary, and I quote, "Ang unang makakaalam dapat niyan ay FDA kung merong pumasok na bakuna dito sa Pilipinas," unquote. Mr. President, this statement is alarming and this statement is outrightly confusing.
Nakakalito ayon kay Tolentino dahil tila hindi alam kung sino ba ang talagang dapat nangunguna sa usapin ng pagsasagawa ng clinical trials.
This begs the question, who is in charge of the clinical trials on COVID-19 treatments in the country? According to DOST, it is the WHO Solidarity Trials to the Data and Safety Monitoring Committee that is the one in charge. As of May 22, the IATF already approved recommendations of the DOST on the participation of the Philippines in the independent clinical trials for COVID-19 vaccines. On the other hand, the Department of Health announced that it has entered into an agreement with the University of the Philippines for the conduct of clinical trials for Japan's anti-flu drug Avigan as a treatment for COVID-19 patients.
Puna niya iisa ang hangarin, ngunit magkaiba ang daan na tinatahak ng dalawang kagawaran.
It appears, Mr. President, that the DOST and the DOH are performing similar, if not overlapping roles in forging agreements with COVID-19 treatment developers. Maliwanag po sa batas, Mr. President, na ang in charge po dito dapat ay Department of Health, maging sa kanilang implementing rules and regulations, kasama po ang Food and Drug Authority. Nowhere in the law, nowhere in their IRRs can we find any reference to the Department of Science and Technology, nowhere in the law, nowhere in the IRR, can we find any authority granted to the Department of Health wherein they can outsource and let another agency perform their functions. Moreover, where do the duties, responsibilities, and accountabilities of DOST, the DOH, and the FDA begin and end?
Itinanggi na rin anya ni FDA Officer in Charge Eric Domingo na may inaprubahan na silang bakuna sa pagkasa ng clinical trials. Kaya't diin ng senador, nakakapagtaka na may mga anunsyo na ang DOST at DOH ukol sa pagkasa ng clinical trials. Gate din ng senador, kailangan maging malinaw ang mga hakbangin ng mga kinaukulang ahensya para magkaroon ng kumpiyansa ang mamamayan sa bisa at kaligtasan ng mga bakuna. Hinimok ni Tolentino ang mga ahensya na maglatag ng malinaw na plano ukol sa mga susubukang bakuna.
For the whole country to heal as one and recover as one, we must act as one. We're still waiting for the roadmap coming from the Department of Health, a clear plan on how to coordinate and conduct the clinical trials.
Sinabi pa na namumuno sa Senate Committee on Local Government na dapat din maging malinaw sa mga lokal na pamahalaan ang pagkasa ng clinical trial. Sa kanyang palagay, para maging malinaw ang lahat, dapat ay masagot ang apat na katanungan.
Kung meron pong, what is the basis of the DOST's participation? Is it really the DOST or is it the Department of Health? Is it by virtue of the IRR or is it because it was delegated to them by the Department of Health? Number two, what is the purpose of the CDA? The CDA is the confidential agreement, the confidential data agreement. Kung pumirma po ba tayo ang DOH or DOST sa CDA, ang ibig sabihin po ba nito, pagkatapos po ng approval ng vaccine, ay doon na lang po sa kanila bibili ng vaccine? Are we bound because of that prior signature to purchase the vaccines from the 5 manufacturers I mentioned a while ago? Because, Mr. President, if you look at current medical bulletins, I think the number one in the race right now is either Moderna or Johnson & Johnson's or even Astra or Pfizer. But nowhere can we find any data that the DOST or DOH signed a CDA agreement with the said companies. Number three, Mr. President, did they secure the informed consent of the participants? And number four, the issue of human rights on human guinea pigging. I pose those questions to self-interpolate myself, but I will not be giving an answer.
Escosio, Radio Inquirer. Nueva Benta, bayan nagtatanong, mamaya nag-uusisa.